January 22nd, 1942. 0430 hours. Southern Luzon, Philippines. The jungle is still black, the kind of darkness that swallows sound. But the ground is already trembling. At a half-hidden U.S. outpost, a young Filipino scout, Private Ramon Villaverde, feels the vibration before he hears it, a low metallic hum, quick and sharp, like an angry insect trapped in a tin can. He squints through the palm fronds and finally sees them. 3 M3 Stuart light tanks slipping through the trees with uncanny speed. Their engines buzz rather than roar. Their silhouettes look small, almost toy-like, especially compared to the looming Japanese Type 89s rumored to be pushing south. The scouts exchange glances. Even they've heard the jokes. Baby tanks. Toys for children. Tin cans on tracks. Across the lines, Japanese Commander Major Kiyoshi Tanaka smirks as he studies the rough sketches drawn by his forward patrols. These American machines are laughably light, 37mm pop guns, thin armor, and a nearly vertical hull that a Type 94 anti-tank rifle could punch through at the right angle. His infantry believe these little tanks will burn the moment they're hit. But in the cold pre-dawn, something feels different. Because these toys are moving too fast. They're not advancing like normal tanks. They're weaving, darting, hunting. Inside the lead M3, Lieutenant Ernest Red McCall wipes the fog from his periscope and leans forward, adrenaline cracking through his exhaustion. His tank is barely the size of a delivery truck, but it moves like a wild animal. He can feel every bump, every route, every turn the driver takes without hesitation. Remember, McCall whispers into the intercom, we hit them before they even know we're here. The tanks don't wait for daylight. They burst from the tree line in a blur of dust and headlights, and the Japanese infantry ahead freeze, stunned by the sudden violence of motion. A commander once mocked the Stuart for being a wasp, but in this moment, as the jungle erupts, he's about to learn what a wasp really does. The Japanese infantry line breaks before it even begins to fire. Lieutenant McCall's M3 slices through the undergrowth, turret swiveling, tracks spitting mud like a speedboat throwing water. Branches slap the hull, leaves explode in every direction. The 37mm gun doesn't boom, it cracks, quick, sharp, surgical. The first shot punches straight into a makeshift machine gun nest, the second blows apart a log barricade, and the third, fired before the smoke of the first even clears, sends a Japanese squad diving into the brush. To the men on the ground, it feels unreal. A tank shouldn't be this fast. A tank shouldn't appear and vanish between trees like a ghost. Major Tanaka hears the chaos from the rear, the frantic radio chatter, the shouted commands that keep getting cut off. He steps forward, irritated, expecting reports of a heavy tank column. Instead, an out-of-breath runner kneels before him and sputters, "Chisaya sensha desu." Small tanks. Tanaka scowls. Impossible. But then, another crack of the 37mm, then another. Each one closer than the last. He hears something else too, a high, insect-like whine. A sound that never stays in one direction long enough to pinpoint. Inside the Stuart, the crew is running on instinct. Driver Corporal Lewis Hanley throws the tank into wild, looping arcs to avoid return fire. The hull sways, the engine screams, and McCall grips the turret handle so tightly his fingers go numb. But this is what the Stuart was built for: speed, shock, disorientation. "Sticks, swing us left, we'll sting them again," McCall shouts. The M3 darts sideways, firing as it moves, never presenting a stable target. Japanese riflemen attempt to flank, but every time they think they've predicted the tank's path, it doubles back with predatory precision. On a ridge overlooking the jungle floor, Tanaka finally sees it, a tiny, fast-moving silhouette zigzagging between palm trunks and boulders. He raises his binoculars, and in that exact moment, the Stuart turns directly towards him. Too fast, too deliberate, too confident for any toy. A realization hits him like a punch to the chest.
It's not a toy, it's a weapon built for this terrain, and it's coming his way.
Major Tanaka doesn't hesitate. He barks orders, sending a squad to reposition a Type 94 anti-tank rifle along a narrow clearing. It's a thin weapon, barely taller than a man, but against light armor, it's deadly enough. Or so he hopes. The men scramble into position, dropping to the wet soil, lining up the gun toward the approaching noise. The jungle is vibrating now, not with the stomp of heavy armor, but with something stranger, more agile. It slithers through the trees like a predator stalking its prey. Then, the silhouette reappears. The M3 Stuart bursts through a curtain of vines, engine screaming as it hits a hump in the ground and launches slightly upward. Dirt sprays in a perfect arc. The tank lands hard, but keeps coming. The Type 94 crew opens fire. A sharp metallic clang rings out as a round glances off the Stuart's angled front plate. Another shot sears past the turret, close enough for Mikhail to feel the vibration through the hull. "Hold steady! No, forget that!" Mikhail snaps. "Sticks, punch it right through them!" The driver doesn't question it. He slams the accelerator. The M3 surges forward like a charging bull. The anti-tank crew tries to pivot, but it's too late. The M3 plows straight through the clearing, scattering the gun, smashing the tripod, sending men diving into the brush as the tank whips past in a blur of steel. Tanaka watches in disbelief. That tiny machine shouldn't be capable of that kind of force or that kind of precision. But this is the Stuart's domain. Narrow trails, twisting vines, tight jungle corridors where heavier tanks choke and die. And the Americans know it. Because this wasn't an escape, it was a setup. Beyond the clearing, another two Stuarts break camouflage, forming a loose triangle pattern around Tanaka's forward infantry. Their engines thrum like a swarm of mechanical wasps, ready to sting as one. The Japanese troops are now trapped between three moving threats they can barely track. Every direction feels wrong, every shadow feels alive. And Tanaka realizes something horrifying. The jungle, his greatest natural ally, has turned against him. It's hiding the enemy, shielding them, magnifying their speed. He opens his mouth to give an order, but a sudden blast from the tree line cuts him off, echoing like a warning shot from the jungle itself. Something bigger is coming. The blast rolls through the valley like a thunderclap. Leaves shudder. Birds explode out of the canopy. Even the Stuart crews tense, unsure of what just fired. Then the source reveals itself. Through the dripping foliage, the shape of a Japanese Type 97 Shiha emerges. Heavier, slower, and armed with a 57mm gun that can turn an M3 Stuart into scrap metal with a single hit. Its turret crawls toward the clearing, hunting for the darting shapes that have shredded Tanaka's infantry line. Lieutenant Mikhail sees it first. "Chiha, right flank," he mutters, jaw tightening. "Boys, this just got interesting." Inside the M3, the crew falls silent. This is the matchup every Stuart crew dreads. The Stuart is twice as fast, but the Chiha only needs one clean shot. For a moment, nothing moves. Just the humid air pulsing between predator and prey. Then the Chiha fires. A violent streak of light rips past McCall's hull, punching into the jungle and blowing a crate of ammunition skyward in a fountain of dirt and leaves. The shockwave rattles the Stuart so hard the turret ring squeals. "Move! Move!" McCall shouts. Sticks yerks the controls, and the M3 vanishes behind a bend in the trail just as another shell tears through where it stood seconds earlier. But McCall isn't retreating. He's maneuvering. The Stuarts split into separate paths, weaving through narrow gullies, bamboo thickets, and half-flooded ravines. Every few seconds, one tank shows itself just long enough to fire a snapshot, then disappears again before the Chiha's gun can traverse. To Tanaka, watching from the rear, it looks maddening. 3 American tanks flickering in and out like mirages, each movement deliberate, each shot timed to keep the Chiha spinning in circles. He realizes with a sinking heart that the Americans are using the jungle as a weapon, turning the terrain into a maze. The Chiha can't navigate fast enough. Every tree is a shield, every vine another blind corner. Inside the Chiha, the gunner curses as the turret grinds left, then right, then back again, never fast enough to lock onto the targets. McCall sees the hesitation. He sees the Chiha commit to a turn. That's his window. Sticks! We're cutting behind it. Tight circle. Don't stop for anything. The M3 rockets into motion, blasting through a patch of dung bamboo. Splinters crack against the hull. The crew grips their handles as the tank tilts dangerously, sliding sideways before catching traction again. The Chiha's turret rotates desperately, but too slow. For the first time all day, McCall smiles. He's found the weak spot. A vulnerability the Japanese still refuse to believe exists. As the M3 rounds the final curve, its gun leveled at point-blank range, McCall inhales sharply. One shot, one chance. And if he's wrong, they won't get another.
The Stuart bursts from the brush like a slingshot. For a split second, McCall has a perfectly framed view of the Chiha's rear armor, thinner, unprotected, exposed. The Japanese crew inside still thinks the Americans are somewhere ahead, not behind them. The turret is stubbornly turned the wrong way. On target! Fire! The 37mm recoils with a violent crack. The shell slams into the Chiha's engine deck, punching through the vents and igniting a geyser of sparks and smoke. The heavier tank shudders, its tracks grinding to a halt as flames lick up its rear plating. Seconds later, the turret freezes mid-turn, caught permanently off guard. Inside the M3, no one cheers. They're breathing too hard, still listening for danger. But the jungle has changed. The gunfire fades, the shouting retreats. The crackling Chiha engine becomes the only sound left in the clearing. Across the ridge, Japanese infantry break formation and scatter, unsure where the next attack will come from, or if they'll even see it before it hits. The fear that once belonged to the Americans is now theirs. Major Tanaka stands motionless, staring at the burning wreck, his heaviest asset, undone by a tank he had mocked as a toy. He suddenly understands the metaphor that had spread through his ranks. The Stuart is a wasp. Small, fast, annoying. But if you underestimate it for even a second, the sting is sudden and unforgiving. Below, McCall watches the Chiha burn, sweat mixing with the grime on his neck. He doesn't gloat. He just whispers into the intercom, "All right, boys, back into cover. We're not done." The other M3s emerge from the jungle gloom one by one, engines humming, their hulls spattered with mud and foliage. They regroup in a small clearing, forming a spearhead pointed deeper into Japanese-held territory, because this victory isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new pattern, one that will repeat across the Philippines, across Burma, across every jungle battlefield where heavy tanks choke and light tanks fly. The M3 Stuarts will keep stinging, and the Japanese will never mock them again. As the column disappears into the green shadows, the jungle swallows their tracks, but not their legend.